And we are live. Thank you. Welcome. And I am here once again with the beautiful Ayesha Dami Magueda.
Aw, my beautiful
Oh,
friend, Gwenda Lambert. Always good to be with you. Thank you for
oh,
having me.
there it is. Okay, I'm hoping that we're live. We are live. Yes, thank you. We're still trying to get the live thing. I'm not sure. I hope it still is here. But we're just going to keep talking as if it is. There it is. It's good. We have a really, really super important topic. By the way, this is like the last just talking before the end of the year. The week of Christmas, we're going to post something else. We may be having other conversations with other people at other times, but this is the last Sunday visit. But you can always visit us on Just Talking Gwenda with guests, and that's on YouTube. And Ayesha, I believe you posted on your YouTube channel as well, don't you?
I did. I was posting it on Intentionally Design Your Life, but as you know, since I've switched over to the Purposeful Path, I'm just running a little behind on getting my episodes up, but it will be up there as well. Yeah.
Okay, so Just Talking with Gwenda and guests.
Yes.
Let's just leave it at that. So excited to be here today with the beautiful Ayesha. And we are talking about something that's really, really, really important. And that is when we are doing any kind of work, and I'm just going to start with the grief recovery method type of context here. And then we're going to pass it off to Ayesha so that we can talk about it from a coaching perspective. But as you know, we just talk here. So it's going to go back and forth, and we're going to just talk about it, right? So with the grief recovery method, the one thing about that process is that it is a 6-week process if it's one-on-one. It's an 8, and I'm not even going to say week. It's a 6-session process, or it's an 8-session process if it's done in a group. And the thing is, there's a couple of weeks there that can be really emotionally draining. The thing is, when we are actually delving into our emotional landscape, or in the case of death or loss, when something sudden happens, like it's one thing when we have, a death that we see coming, like a terminal illness. But when we have something that's sudden, like there's no good way, there's no better way. It's always a shock, and it always takes an emotional toll on us. So I will refer to that as acute grief. When we're in an acute grief situation, you can be overwhelmed very easily because your nervous system has been taxed, and potentially you're going into flight, fight, or freeze, depending on who that person was to you, how it affects you. We tend to do like a life review, and us as humans, we point out all the horrible things that we've never done, those hopes, dreams, and expectations. And the challenge is that we need to find balance in the middle of that. Now, how does that look? When you're doing the grief recovery method, you have to make sure, and you're experiencing a loss, a sudden death, you want to be able to make sure that you have your grounding things in place. We have our habits of like, if I go for a walk every day because I like to hug trees, then you make sure you go for a walk every day. Even if you're not feeling it, you get out of your house. If there's music, you may not want to be dancing soca or doing something high spirited, but even putting on a slower music and allowing your body to move is something that, if you have that as a routine, if you have something that allows your body to recoup some of that emotional energy, sleep is a great one as well. Sometimes we sleep too much. Sometimes we're not sleeping enough. What kind of things do you use to help you sleep? These are the things that we really want to look at before there's something that's an event in our life. We want to make sure that when we're running every day or 4 or 5 times a week, that we don't then use that running to escape. We use it to recalibrate where we are, who we are. So the one thing that I know that I incorporate when you take the grief recovery method program with me is that I like to provide a list of somatic healing, a healing team, so to speak, so that when you're going through this process, when you are, and this really leads to what emotional resilience is, right? Emotional resilience is when we can feel everything that we feel and still stay present in our body. We'll come back to the in your body part a little later, but that you can stay present so that all of those feelings, because there's also going to be joy in there. There's going to be those memories that make us smile and then make us laugh and cry even harder sometimes. There's going to be the visits from people that we haven't seen for a long time, or the connections of people from the past. We can feel all of those emotions, but we have to make sure that we take care of ourselves while we're going through that whole process. Now, that was a really beefy, heady way to start this. Ayesha, what do you think?
Well, you've touched on a lot of really great elements of dealing with grief and dealing with our emotions and creating balance, because that is the key, is to create balance and to come back to a state of wellness, of overall wellness, right? And so from a coaching perspective and from a purposeful path perspective, what we want to do is we want to look at what is the intention behind what you want to accomplish at that time, right? So one thing that I appreciated that you mentioned, Glenda, is to have your routine in place even before anything happens. And that is a wellness routine that you have. I talk about your 4 core elements, which are body, heart, mind, and spirit. When we're connected with those things, when we see how different events impact us in those 4 elements of our life, we can get a sense of how we're reacting, right? So some people don't know, and I will say this about myself, is that for a long time, I didn't realize that I had low-lying anxiety. Not something that was really took over my life all the time, but the thing that I noticed was that I ruminated a lot. Like I couldn't help it. I would just get stuck in these ruminations and they would just repeat over and over again. And even though I could be present and I could come to things and I could contribute in my personal and professional life, that as soon as I stepped out of the spotlight and as soon as I stepped away from a situation, all of a sudden my mind would turn to that negativity again. And I didn't realize that for me, that's a residual trauma that I was processing, and not processing, that I just wasn't aware of or dealing with at that time. So over the past few years, what I've been able to recognize is, in connecting with the core elements, you get to see that there are things that you might be holding on to that create emotional reactions. And if you're not regularly aware of them and connecting with yourself and taking that time to really look at your emotional landscape, look at what's happening around you, look at what are the things that cause reactions in you, and then how do you approach them differently than what you have before, then when you get to a point where you have a bigger event, something that is traumatic or grief laden for you, it could be the loss of someone that's close to you, the loss of a relationship, the loss of like a job or some purpose that you had, some kind of big life transition that you weren't expecting or not expecting for things to turn out that way, then it makes it even harder for you to navigate through that, because you're not prepared. You don't have your routine, you don't have a way to process, and then you can spiral more. And for me, that showed up as rumination and reactivity. And I had probably not as much balance as I would have liked to have had for many years. And so over the last couple of years, it's something that I've been working on creating and being able to just navigate it with more ease, with a little more recognition of what's happening, more clarity, with more purpose, right? So finding the balance starts even before the grief arrives. Creating balance for yourself is very important. And one thing that I would say is that it's also a practice. So it's a practice. And when I say practice, it means that it's not perfect, right? And I always say practice makes permanent. I don't say practice makes perfect, because that's not the goal. The goal is not to have perfection. The goal is to be able to have those touchstones in your life that allow you to create balance. So like you said, it could be a walk, that you take a walk. It could be talking to people that are close to you. It could be journaling. It could be meditating. It could be somatic things that you do. One thing I learned in a somatic class recently was a really simple exercise, which is that when you're feeling overwhelmed, you take a moment, you take a pause, and taking a pause, of course, is crucial at all times. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. But one thing you can do is take a pause, look to your right, look to your left, look to the ground so you can see where you're rooted, and then look to the sky and know that you have options, you have space. And that is one exercise that you can do to bring that emotional response down a little bit. So there's all kinds of things that we can introduce into our practice, our daily practice, that gives us that grounding and that foundation to create balance in the situations that come up, that are life-changing, that are transitional, that have grief associated with them, and be able to navigate them in a purposeful way.
Love it all. The best, I had to write this down. If something gets in the way of the purpose that you had for your life, I love that phrase. Again, I think the important thing, like low-grade anxiety, the thing with actually getting to know ourselves, which is really our main purpose for being on this planet, is know yourself. What do you enjoy doing? What are you good at? What do you suck at, but you want to do better? All that kind of stuff is really why we're here.
Yeah.
The second part is to connect with people, starting with ourselves. As we pointed out here, we're the beginning of our own inner circle. And I love the purpose, because this is the whole thing, is that a lot of times I think we are so focused on the tasks that we're doing that we don't notice that it's like, oh, low-grade anxiety. Oh, anxiety runs in my family. My mother was anxious. My mother had a perforated gastric ulcer. Well, that's the biggest worrying. Like that's, anything that's irritable bowel, anything that's in that from a chakra standpoint is like associated with anxiety. And I know that another instance was, I used to say I'm getting excited when I was anxious. And there's a difference between anxiety, am I safe? Or excited, that it's like I'm trying something new and I actually enjoy this stuff. So and then I'm just going to bring in, just to add another layer of possible confusion here, disassociation. Because if you have had a trauma background, there can be times where, like I would joke, not really joke, about how I was good at meditation because I would disassociate. So here's the challenge: is we want to be able to stay in our body while we're feeling certain things. It can be work just to get us to remain in our body when we're in a moment of trauma or some sort of dramatic death or loss event. That's why I love the purpose that you had. Like something's getting in the way with how you viewed yourself in the world. That can be jarring as well. And some of those things, like you talk about meditation, a good example of that, when you're in a moment of you have less emotional energy to be able to deal with life, is instead of having one of these lovely guided meditations that go on and they tell you what to do, you might be like, I don't have the bandwidth for this. I'm just going to listen to some classical music and focus on how those notes make me feel. I'm going to go and I'm going to wash my hands in cool water because I want to be in my body. I want to make sure. Now, these are things because I went for years and didn't even realize, like, I can remember the first time I had somebody give me a disassociation questionnaire and I'm like going, why are they asking if I'm just, wasn't even aware. So that's a really good observation that you could see that you had this anxiety that, because that's really the biggest thing. Do you feel safe? Is your worldview changed? I'm doing a session right now, and this one participant said this beautiful line, painful as it may be. Oh, is gravity going to work today? Because my whole world's turned upside down. And that can happen. Yeah. So when you're in that place, when people talk about like a gratitude, ritual, meditation ritual, you've got to be able to keep focused on what that ritual, what that does for you. Does it ground you? Does it support you supporting yourself? So again, there was days I know in my worst times where getting out of my bedroom and onto the couch was the epitome of climbing Mount Everest. And I had to really look at that in a balanced perspective, because I did not have bandwidth to do a lot, that was the best I could do that day. So even terminology like living your best life or being your best self, that's why I have a real challenge with that kind of terminology, because that changes depending on what's going on in our life. And it doesn't mean that you're stronger or weaker or anything else. It's really about finding that balance and appreciating you and saying, am I doing the best I can today? And answering with emotional honesty, yes, I am. Then that's enough at that time. What do you think, Ayesha?
Mm-hmm. So much there, Gwen. I think I would say, so a lot of things. One is that I would say that, it's taken me a long time to even figure out what balance means to me, right? Because when you're talking about, like being able to customize a practice so that it works for you. So you're talking about how if you, if you don't have the bandwidth for a meditation, that you just listen to some classical music, you let yourself move to it, or you allow it to kind of just wash over you, whatever that happens to look like. I think that for me, it took me a long time to give myself permission to be able to customize my own routine, and also to recognize that one size doesn't fit all. So what might work for somebody, or the way that a particular meditation teacher says, well, now I want you to do this, that may not work for you. And you have to be able to know yourself well enough to recognize, for example, like when you were talking about dissociation, I wonder how many people think that that's normal in a meditative state, right? Because the way that some meditation teachers describe it, it's like, okay, you are going to another plane, you were leaving your body, so there are different aspects of meditation. There are different purposes for meditation. So you have to know, what is my purpose for this practice today? Is if my purpose is to be in my body, then that means staying connected with yourself and not leaving to go to another plane, right? What is the purpose of my meditation practice today? Is it to help me be present, or is it to help me run away? Right. And even asking yourself those questions, like, what is the purpose of my practice today? Is it to help me connect with myself? Is it to help me connect with my higher powers? Is it to help me be more grounded, right? And and as I said earlier, taking a pause is the most crucial element of that, is that when you're in that moment and before you do anything, it's about understanding what your own intention is behind that action. So what is my intention for my meditation today? What is my intention in this moment? I'm feeling reactive. I'm feeling like I'm ruminating. What do I want to do? Do I want to run away, or do I want to be present? And I want to say also that there's nothing wrong with whatever choice you make. If you make the choice to run away at that moment, that's okay, because when you come back another time, you're going to make a choice to be present, right? So it's also understanding that life fluctuates, that you're not meant to have everything be on a straight line all the time and just run along that, like especially, when you talked about best life, you and I are on the same page as that. I don't ever say I want to be my best self. I say I want to be my whole self. I want to connect all pieces of myself, and I want to be who I am. And I get to choose. When I know who I am, I get to choose how I respond to situations. And sometimes that might be messy. Sometimes that might be uncomfortable. Sometimes that might be painful, right? And there are other times when it's going to be joyous, and it's going to be lovely, and it's going to be expansive, and it's going to be heart opening. And it's to recognize that this is the nature of life. Life comes in ebbs and flows. Life fluctuates. So how do you navigate it? Well, the best thing that you could do is to ground yourself in yourself, know yourself, love yourself, protect yourself, conserve your energy, discern the situations that you want to engage in, right? Recognize what's healthy for you, recognize what's not healthy for you. And you don't have to cut people out of your life. You don't have to stop doing things that are necessarily unhealthy, but think about, what is the purpose of them? What are they doing for you? What is it giving you to do these things? If it makes you feel badly, if anything that you're doing makes you feel bad about yourself, makes you feel bad about your life, makes you feel like you're worthless, makes you feel even more in pain, then you have a choice about whether you want to continue that or whether you want to find a different way to navigate those things. And that is a huge part of balance, is actually having clarity and recognition about what are the things in your life that are working for you, and what are the things that are not working for you, right? And if you choose to change it, great. And if you choose not to change it, that's okay too. Just know what that's doing to you. Just understand what that's doing to you, right? What are your thoughts?
Beautiful. I loved, everything. But when you said it took you a long time just to be able to give yourself permission to not do, to not do whatever it is. And I can remember, because this is now, we're coming up to actually at this time, 10 years ago now. 10 years ago is when my health crisis started, really. I was off work at this time 10 years ago. And I thought, oh, I just need to get something to take the edge off. I was crying. I was starting to cry in random places. My body was telling me, you're not listening to me, so I'm going to drop a building on your head. And it's great to reflect back, because I thought I was a strong person, and many people, how I hate that S word. I love that point, that it's like, sometimes, I would use exercise, as we call it, a stirb in the grief recovery world, that it's something that we're using to deflect or distract, because maybe we can't emotionally deal with what's going on. Eating is another one of my great things. I love that.
Yeah, for a lot of us, eating is part of it. Yeah.
So it's like being able to take that bag of chips and going, okay, I know I'm eating this right now, and I know why I'm eating it right now. And I'm not fighting that demon today. I'm going to try it again tomorrow. So that's really what courage is. So I really don't like the strong word, but I love that about giving ourselves permission. And I loved what you said about the discernment part. But it takes work to actually be able to sit in our emotional stew, our emotional soup, and go, what does all this? What is this? And take apart that yarn, that ball of wool. Because balance, it's easy on a good day. It's like Oprah when she used to say, oh, it's really great when people are with you in the limo, but who's going to ride on the bus with you? And this is really, I would say, this is for you, to you. It's really easy when you're in a good place. You're surrounded by friends. You have, your job. You're really enjoying it. Maybe your family's like, so that's okay, because it's not overly dramatic. Maybe, who knows? But it's really great when everything's going well, or you're not aware that you're filling your life with stuff to keep away from maybe looking at the family stuff or looking at the relationship stuff, and I think that's what happened with COVID, was people went from, it wasn't necessarily balance, but busyness, right? So I'm going to
Yeah.
get outside of what I'm doing, and I'm going to go here. And my calendar's always full, and the kids are always doing this. And it's really interesting how the last thing that we do is want to sit with ourselves and just go, hey, how can I discern how can I really understand that is a low grade anxiety, unless you're sitting and paying attention to what's going on. Like really, as an observer, not a judger, no judgment, no analyzing.
I like analyzing. I do like that.
We're going to make a new word. We're going to get that on shirts. And it's to be able to watch yourself, right? And to be able to go, because now in hindsight, when I go to that person back then who would run 12 to 15K just for fun, work out for 2.5, 3 hours on a regular basis. I did love that. I miss it now because I can't do that. But I also never once thought about, I always thought about my muscles and what they could do, and my lungs and my heart when I ran, but I didn't think about how that was hurting me, the me inside of this flesh suit. And that's the one thing that I would encourage, like anybody that uses, because fitness stuff is easy enough to write off, but it's like, if you're, because it's a healthier addiction, or it's a healthier thing that we do. But again, everything, when we're talking about balance, are you doing it because you want to be busy all the time, or are you doing it because you want to be outside and you love the trees and you love the air coming in and out of your lungs, which can be meditative in itself? I'm just going off on a little tangent here, because I remember all those things, and I can remember in the middle sometimes how I would be able to appreciate, this is why I love working out, because I love the cold air coming in my nose and the warm air going out my mouth. I love feeling my heart beat, my muscles working. I love the sound of my feet crunching in the snow. If you're not in those kind of places where you can actually appreciate what you are doing at that time, then I think potentially it might be an indicator of being out of balance, right? Like, and just one of those things, because again, as you said, it's different for everybody. Being able to know when we're pushing ourselves to distract, or are we pushing ourselves because we want to get stronger? And this is an emotional resilience as well. Is this tough not to cry when I feel like crying? Is it okay to, I have a family relationship that isn't working well, so instead I go through like, what is it, the 10 days of Christmas or 12 days of Christmas? Instead, it's the 12 days of anxiety, or this 12 days of stress, because, oh my God, I have to go to see my family. So again, is there a way that we can look at that balance, that we can look at, and what did you say? You said so many perfect things, because you're the one with the great words. I have words too that are good, but you just said, it was along the lines of the discernment part. Is like, how do we know when we're actually doing something that is the best for us. And that's up to us to define and decide every day. And
Yeah.
sometimes our best can be just like, I'm going to smile, turn around and walk out. No explanation. What was that? Katharine Hepburn,
Yeah.
never complain, never explain.
Mm.
Anyways, what do you think about that? That was quite the ramble.
No, it was very good. You touched on a lot of really important points. So thank you for that. I think that just to add on to what you're saying, I think that, you know, you talked earlier also about naming emotions. And I think that sometimes if we have, you know, because all of our emotions, our emotional landscape, how we deal with things, all comes from how we grew up. What did we see in our homes? What did we see in our parents? How did we deal with stuff? How did they deal with stuff? You know, so you may not have that habit of talking about things. You may not have that habit of even acknowledging your own feelings. So naming your feelings is so important. Like sometimes you might think, I'm angry. But if you take the time to actually excavate what's happening, you can see I'm not just, yes, I'm angry, but underneath that anger is disappointment, it's sadness, it's frustration, it's abandonment, it's fear, it's all kinds of things that are living right underneath the surface, right? You talked about how people dealt with the pandemic by keeping busy. I feel like that is one of the biggest unspoken global griefs that we all share, that nobody's talking about, the fact that we lost 2 years of our lives and that we lost each other. A lot of us lost each other. We lost our connection. We lost our sense of safety to be out in the world. We lost our desire to, you know, some of us lost our desire to, our motivation. We lost our sense of purpose because we weren't doing the things that we normally did. I mean, there is a lot of unresolved grief around the pandemic, and now coming out of the pandemic, there is a lot of grief around the recession because people have, you know, you don't have the means to do what you used to do before. The inflation rates are so high. Like when we think about grief and we think about loss, we've termed this in very personal and very kind of human connected ways. But there is grief around events, about global events, about political things that happen, about economics and finances, that we never attach this emotion of grief to those things as well. So understanding your emotions, really digging down and feeling them and naming them and knowing where they're coming from and being able to identify them gives you that discernment, gives you that clarity, gives you that foundation to say, okay, I'm feeling afraid because they just cut my hours at work. The inflation rate is really high. I'm worried about being able to put food on the table, sending my kids to school, you know, to paying my mortgage. Like those are things that you don't want to be overwhelmed by them, but you do want to identify them and figure out, what do I need to do about this to be able to go forward, right? So this is all around self-responsibility as well. So when I talk about purpose, I'm talking about it as a responsibility that we have to ourselves. What is the purpose of how I'm engaging this particular thing? And it also means that we move out of auto response. We move out of this kind of sleepless, like sleepy state that we're not aware, that we're not paying attention, that we just act and react and ruminate and all those things. And it's work. It's a lot of work. And I know that people are tired. I'm tired. I know you're tired. Like a lot of us are exhausted after the emotional toll of the last 2 years. And even just trying to come back into some semblance of normalcy after the pandemic, it's exhausting. Keep bearing all that in mind. If we want the changes to happen in our lives and we want to be able to create the things that we want to create, and we want to be able to navigate with clarity and with purpose, and to be able to get the results that we want, and also recognize where there are systemic barriers, where there are racist barriers, where there are discriminatory barriers. Where do we navigate and push, and where do we navigate and walk away? Like, these things require us to be purposeful and to be present all the time. And, you know, for some people, I know there are people that are not going to want to do that. Right? And that's okay. If that's their path, that's their path. But if we want change, then that means you got to be present. You got to show up, and you got to do things differently. And that starts right here. That's where that starts, is do it differently for yourself, so that then you can engage the world and the people around you and your situations differently as well. I feel this because I'm in the middle of it right now myself. And I've been making some really big changes too. And so I know I know what I'm talking about. This is not an easy path, but for the changes that I want, I know I have to do the work, and there's no getting around that.
No, and it's exciting and it's empowering. Like I'm very excited today because I finally feel that's why I love the purpose that you have. You know, a lot of times I know that we can be in the middle of stuff. As I said, I was in the middle of stuff for years, and I kept thinking, oh, I'm better now, and pushing myself when I knew, emotionally honest, I wasn't really there. And I think that too is like a blend of intuition and just complete self-awareness. Is like, when am I pushing? And again, I know I always come back to the jock thing. When am I pushing because I can push my muscles to get stronger? I can push them. And when is the pain that I'm feeling, I know that it's not something to push through. It's something that's saying, I need your attention.
Yeah, absolutely.
We are the only ones that can create our own user's manual. And it's an ongoing modification.
Absolutely.
Right. So I think that's, look at that, 6:54. Look, listen, I know we've just talked, definitely we're at least at half an hour, but this, as I said, this was a juicy topic. And this is something that you may be feeling over the holidays. We've got every single, happy Hanukkah to anybody who celebrates. We've got almost every single anything on the planet celebrating something in December, right? I think we just finished, or we just started Kwanzaa last week. We have all sorts of stuff. And so this is what makes this time, the interesting thing is that when we start valuing ourselves, then our boundaries come from that. And as you said, you're not going to just cut out people. And it's not really to cut out people. It's the fact to be more of you standing up for you. So it's not about what anybody else feels, thinks. It's about you saying, I can't do this right now. This isn't in my best interest. And, that might, you never know, because maybe doing that and not being the caregiver of life, it allows somebody else to step up and be that role, because maybe you're always the one that's doing it.
That's right.
And then we've got to let people do. It's like men in the dishwasher. This is a terrible analogy. I'm totally saying that right now, but it's like, or kids in the dishwasher, or kids in washing dishes. Just because they don't clean the dishes the way that you want them to, not the way that you would, doesn't mean they're not doing it, or doesn't mean that they can't be taught or learned. And more importantly, doesn't mean that we can't share the responsibility, because we all learn, right? We all learn, but we have to accept that responsibility first. We have to say, I am a part of X, this family, this household, this community, this world. And what is it that I need to do to show up? As you said, it's hard work. It's not easy. If it was easy, everybody would do it. And, but on the other hand, by not pushing ourselves, our muscles don't get stronger. Our resilience doesn't get better. And there's a total rush when you actually you set a boundary that you didn't even know you needed to set, and then all of a sudden somebody like respects it like full out, and you're like, whoa, look at
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
Look what I can do. I can take care of myself. And at 50 or 59 in my case, right? So that's the whole thing about balance. It changes day to day, event to event. Be kind to yourself. Be gentle with ourselves. And when we're saying that, that means that if somebody shows up or they say, send a text, and it's like you sense that they're not really into chat. I don't know if you follow your sense. Do we say, are you okay for today? We can set it another time. And don't take it personally if they say, no, can we do that? And then just imagine what would happen if we actually say, yeah, no, I acknowledge that you're entitled to not feel 1,000% amazing today, because maybe you've got something on your mind other than our relationship and our chat, right? Anyways, any last words? Because I know I've just hunkered into this and we're probably close to an hour now, but
Yeah, I think so. Well, like you said, it's a good topic. I think the only thing I would say to finish off is just about coming back to giving yourself permission. And this is really a process of unlearning and releasing, and knowing that you can actually live your life on your own terms, that you can choose, that even if other people don't like your choices, that's their problem, that's not your problem, right? You get to make your choices. And, you know, I love the example that you used about the dishwasher, because as you were talking about it, I was like, who the hell cares? If your spouse is willing to load the dishwasher, male or female or other, if your spouse is willing to load the dishwasher, if your kids are willing to load the dishwasher, then hey, can I get an amen?
yeah.
Why don't you just say, okay, that's great, thank you. And you know what, if you have to clean a little bit of food out of the bottom of the dishwasher after it's done, who cares? You've got people that are engaged, that want to help, that want to be a part of life, that want to contribute. Why would you stifle them because of some, you know, sense of how it needs to be done properly? Like I would say, what I'm learning is stop judging and start living. So start being. And that will create so much space and so much ease. And this thing that you're talking about being able to see other people in that same lens as just people who are navigating clumsily and not always gracefully the same way that you are, then you naturally begin to have more affinity, more connection, less judgment, more ease. Like you just create all that space. So, you know, you have an opportunity. All of us have an opportunity to have a life that is a loving life, that's a gentle life, like you said, that's a caring life. If we choose to unlearn the things that don't serve us and take responsibility and show up in our lives for ourselves and for the people that we care about, right?
Amen. Amen. And with all that said, I know I'll screw up again tomorrow.
As we do.
And you know what? We just do our best and come from the heart.
That's right. And then you just come back because it's a practice.
It's a practice.
It's not to be perfect.
It's
It's just to keep up the practice. Practice makes permanent.
I love it. I love you, Ayesha. I'm very
I love
blessed to
you
have you in
too,
my
babe.
world. Thank you, anybody and everybody
Thank
who's
you.
shown up in 2022 to watch any of
Yes.
our Just Talkings. Again, if there's anything, please comment, like, subscribe, and we'll see you next year. We will be posting best of over the holidays. And Ayesha, again, you're a blessing that I count daily, but we're coming to the end of 2022. So I just want to say how grateful I am you're in my world.
I love you so much. I am also very, very grateful for you in so many ways. And I am so looking forward to all the amazing things that we're going to continue to do together. And I applaud you for all the amazing things that you're also doing for the grief recovery work. It is important work and people need it. And so I'm super, super proud of you. And I also just want to add blessings to everyone who is celebrating whatever you're celebrating this year, and sending all of our love and blessings and gratitude to all of you for the new year as well. And to you, love you.
Okay, guys, that's us signing off for 2022. Have a great day. Have a great season, and blessings of the solstice. Okay, until next year.
Bye-bye.
Bye.